and ABC News anchor Lindsay Davis.
Thank you so much to the Aspen Institute for having us. Governor, thank you so much for taking the time to have this very important conversation. 4 years ago, you signed landmark legislation committing to 100% clean energy in your state by 2050. Want to just get a progress report. Are you on track to reach that goal?
We are on track, and actually I'm really excited to let everybody know. I think that in the introduction, some reference was made to our having doubled the amount of renewable energy that we're producing in the state. We're actually on the verge of tripling the amount. And that means that we're more than 2/3, almost 70% of the energy that we produce and use in the state of Illinois is clean energy. We start out with a really great base of nuclear, which gives us a little bit of a head start, at least on the clean energy front. And then we started out way behind, if you ask me, on renewable energy, solar and wind in the state. I say started out when I came into office, and when we passed the Climate and Equitable Jobs Act, we call it CEJA here, it really gave us an enormous boost. That was in the latter part of 2021, and it's taken us a couple of years. This is a brand new endeavor for the state of Illinois. It's taken us a couple of years to really turn the crank, and it is working, I think, better than many of us had hoped, and which I'm proud of. But there's still a lot of work to do. We really do. We've got legislation that's teed up. Didn't quite get it done in the legislature this last spring, but coming into the new legislature, I am committed to getting this passed, and it includes energy storage. It includes expanding the opportunity within solar and wind. And we just have, there are ways in which we can tweak the already really great CEJA bill that we passed and I signed.
1 year ago, you described combating the climate crisis as swimming up a waterfall. Since then, there are those critics who have said that the Trump administration has rolled back decades of progress when it comes to environmental protections. Is your progress for your state at risk?
It's at risk, for sure. I mean, in terms of the momentum, right? You can lessen the momentum. We're still heading in the right direction. But it's true that, when the Congress takes away features of the IRA, which was an enormous boost for many of us who are already going in the right direction, it makes it harder. I mean, we've been working on expanding industry in the state that's focused on climate action, or industry that is about clean energy. Just giving an example, in 2017, Rivian took over a defunct Mitsubishi factory in Normal, Illinois. They're literally, the thousands of people who had worked there before had been fired, and that plant closed. Rivian came in. There were, when they came in, 8 employees, maybe 12, if I'm not mistaken, and now there are about 8,000 employees making electric vehicles in Normal. And suppliers, by the way. So we've been working with Rivian, attracting the suppliers to the electric vehicle manufacturing world, to a supplier park that's next door to Rivian. And we just announced one today, a seat manufacturer that's moving to Illinois as a result of that. But I guess the point I'd make is the problems that are brought on by the current federal administration have not hindered us from doing the work that we need to do. They've made it, more difficult, but the progress is still there. And I believe that the nightmare that I think many of us feel like is happening to all the progress that we're trying to make on climate action will end in 3.5 years, but we can't stop fighting hard for what we believe in.
The UN has referred to this moment as climate crunch time, and has said, to our own peril, if all nations do not reduce their greenhouse gases by 42% by 2030, it's going to be catastrophic. Do you think that that's even possible if we're just talking about the United States alone reaching that goal?
I don't know whether it's possible, I'll be honest with you. I think, I think many people have been screaming at the top of their lungs, rightfully so, about the necessity of climate action. I was at COP26, so that's now a couple of years in the past, and was there really talking about the progress we had made for the state of Illinois, and how it's really tied specifically and significantly to economic progress. That is to say, if you want to accelerate the endeavor on climate action, you've got to make it understandable to everybody that there are jobs and economic opportunity available to them as a result of the change in our economy. I think people hadn't come to understand that very well in years past. So when we talk about can we get there by 2030 where we need to be, the answer is the incentives have to be in place. Now, whether that's incentives from the federal government in the United States, I wish those incentives weren't being taken away. But at least at the state level, we're pushing as hard as ever. And once again, as we prove out the efficacy of creating new industries and hiring many new people in good-paying jobs, I think we're proving out the idea that you can accelerate progress even without the federal government's engagement in the United States. But again, I think I'm hopeful that we'll see a turnaround in the federal government's attitude before 2029, but certainly in 2029.
Scientists agree that in order for mitigation to be possible, there needs to be a global response. So I was just asking initially about the United States, but what do you say to those Americans who say, look, whatever we do, it doesn't matter if you have these real big polluters like China and India who are not doing their part?
China's not doing enough. China is doing something. And so, we need to keep working. Again, this has to do a lot with the conversation that goes on at the international level, and not just through the United Nations or through COP, but in the global kind of one-on-one conversations. I'm a big believer, by the way, that relationships matter in international relations. The personal relationships between leaders matter, and I think to the extent that there are people at the federal level in the United States, and again, I know we're talking internationally, but we are still the world leader. I mean, I think our power has been diminished, to be honest with you, as a result of the current administration, but I do believe we continue to have world leadership, and it needs to be part of every conversation for us to make that kind of progress. But yeah, I mean, we can't control what other countries are doing. We can only work to make incentives for them that also work for us. And I can't speak to what frankly, I can't figure out from day to day what the federal administration is going to do. It's quite a conundrum. But I do think that when even the Trump administration views something as beneficial to them politically, they'll do it. And so I think that demonstration needs to be made. It exists. I don't know why they don't see it. I think there's a lot of misinformation. But anyway, the answer is I'm concerned. If it sounds like I'm giving you a lot of words and not giving you a yes or a no, it's because I'm deeply concerned, but I'm also hopeful and optimistic that there are enough of us and there are enough voters out there that care about climate action and about the pollution that's affecting their own home communities, that they will encourage our government, which will then work on the international stage to do the right thing.
Hey, you said that you're concerned. I'm curious, and you can take this question in any direction that you'd like. What keeps you up at night?
Yeah. I slept better before January. What keeps me up at night? Look, I have a 20-year-old son, a 22-year-old daughter. My their whole lives and my whole life, I believe that our world has made progress in protecting people's freedoms, protecting their health. I mean, technology has been beneficial. The development of technology has been beneficial to the world. So when I think about progress, right, and the the arc of the moral universe, I think we've lived in pretty good times. There have been setbacks along the way, but in general, you would say, if you looked back, I'm 60 years old. If you look back from when I was born to now, generally speaking, we've moved in a good direction. So what keeps me up at night is that it feels like every day, and here we're talking about climate action, it feels like every day the things that have been making progress for so many years, that yes, there have been setbacks from year to year, here and there. I feel like we're being set back an enormous amount, particularly in this fight for people's health, that is what climate action is about. It's about, the future of the world, but, specifically, and at least in the near term and longer term, the health of people in the United States and around the world, and their safety and their security. All of it is wrapped up in whether we are making progress on climate action. And it is disturbing to me. So I worry about my 20-year-old, my 22-year-old, and the future. I mean, I'll be around in 2030 when we're supposed to reach, some at least near-term goals. But what the world looks like in 2050 or beyond is what keeps me up at night right now, because it feels like we're undermining all the progress that we ought to be making, that we have made, and that we ought to be making, which gets me. So does it keep me up at night? Yeah. You know what it does, though? I'm up at night thinking about all the things that we all need to do and how I can inspire or help or push or or cajole or beat over the head people to react and do something about it.
Obviously, it's not a one-pronged approach, but what would you say if you had a primary focus or among your top primary focuses with regard to green tech in order to try to turn the thermostat down?
Yeah, that's a really hard question to answer, because I'm sure that if I asked everybody in the audience, almost everybody would have a slightly different answer. So I'll be frank with you. I mean, I think mostly about the state of Illinois. It's my job. But we are such a test bed for so many important things. We have on the shores of this city 20% of the world's fresh water. We are 80% of the United States' fresh water. So I worry about, what are we doing to maintain the environmental integrity of that resource. In my lifetime, we've never talked about, I say we, there are people talking about it, but I think the public wasn't talking about water as a valuable resource. It was just something that was available, and clean water available. It's not available in a lot of places in the world and in the United States now. And so the question is, what do we need to do to preserve the availability of fresh water, because that is life. So I'm not saying that's the only thing, and certainly clean air and clean water are top of mind, but the challenge of what should we focus on, we can't stop focusing on each and every one of the runoff from our agricultural industry in the state. Agriculture is a hugely important industry in the state of Illinois. Farmers want to do the right thing, and it is up to us. We talk about clean tech. It's up to us to help them find ways to grow row crops and other crops in in an environmentally friendly fashion. They want to do that. We have to make sure that it's economically feasible for them to do it. So I worry about all those things, and if I'm being non-specific, it's because I feel when you're a governor, you have to be a little ADD and think about, 8 or 10 things all at once.
Just last week, the Trump administration said that it's going to eliminate the scientific research arm of the EPA.
Yeah.
As you know, a lot of that research has gone to making sure that our water, that our air is safe. You mentioned health just a little while ago. Does that open up opportunities for states, for private firms to take action?
It begins an enormous problem for the country, but does it open up an opportunity? Sure, but remember the federal government has resources that states don't have. The federal government has resources that philanthropy can never come close to meeting. So it's problematic when they pull out of research. I mean, look what they're doing to universities, major research universities across the United States. All of the things that we care about that EPA was investing in, right, when we're in fighting climate change, they're also doing to universities. And so we are and have been since the end of World War II the #1 country in terms of research and development of, well, everything to do with climate action, but also in every other kind of technology development. And it's because the federal government got involved in funding research. And now the federal government is walking away from funding research. So if you don't think it's a problem because you don't think we have a problem with climate, then maybe you're going to start to think it's a problem when our economy falters and we become a second world, non-first world, economically leading enterprise.
Yesterday marked Donald Trump's 6th month in office for his second term. You've had some choice words for him, called him a madman, racist, homophobic, and on.
I said that?
Is there anything in particular that has surprised you about these first 6 months? I didn't think there was going to be a laugh line there.
Surprised me. I think, I don't know about everybody in the audience, but I think I've been surprised at the swiftness of the diminishment of our the future prospects for our country. Really, it's happened so quickly. The pulling back from research is one example of that, but I mean, think about the damage what are we going to do in 2029 when we have millions of people that don't have health care coverage because of what was done now? I should say tens of millions. What are we going to do in 2020? And we have to address it. What are we going to do in 20? And what is the purpose of government, by the way, if we're not addressing these things? And this is what I don't understand what. I am flummoxed. That's why I fail for words here. I'm flummoxed by the idea that we're taking away things from people. They're again, clean water, clean air, a focus on things that matter in people's lives and everyday people's lives, to give a massive tax cut to the wealthiest people in the country who don't need it. I don't, and what kind of future? Okay, you're going to create jobs. I get the idea. The idea being supply side economics, trickle down economics, right? The whole, that economic theory, which I think has failed, but that even if you created a lot of jobs, like if you can't live in your neighborhood because the water is polluted. having a job is meaningless. You're going to lose your job. You're going to lose your health. You're going to lose your life. So there's a balance, I believe, that we all have to find in this country. And part of it is for us to get beyond what the current administration is doing.
So on the flip side, a recent poll said that the majority of Americans view the Democratic Party as too woke, too weak, and out of touch. And so I'm curious what you think the party needs to do in order to rebuild, and if you support the current Democratic leadership in Washington.
I'm laughing because you can do a poll. I can find 3 adjectives to describe the worst things that you could, or anything really, that you could say about Republicans, and you can get a poll to tell you that 80% of people in the Republican Party agree with you. You just can. And, so sure, I can find some epithets and do a poll. Look, I think, here's what I think the Democratic Party, the reason I became a Democrat, first, we're the party that created Medicaid, Medicare, Social Security. We're the party that passed the Voting Rights Act and the Civil Rights Act. We're the party of civil rights. These are all things, and I could list a whole bunch of other things, but these are the things that I think are fundamental values of what it is to be a Democrat. Those are the effect, right? Those are not the symptoms, but the cures that we have come up with over the years, Democrats, over many years. We still believe that the most important role that we have in government is to stand up for working families, for the most vulnerable, for the middle class, that's our job in government, and that Democrats are best equipped with ideas and a belief system that will carry that out. Do Democrats get it right all the time? No. And I think that it is as much a failure of messaging as anything else. Not suggesting that Democrats haven't gotten policies wrong, but let's not walk away from civil rights because we lost an election. Let's not walk away from health care. We haven't talked enough about civil rights. We haven't talked enough about health care. And, the Obamacare, terrific accomplishment. And then Democrats stopped talking about health care. Do you have any idea the abuses that insurance companies and pharmacy benefit managers have visited upon people that need to be corrected? I'm not suggesting you put them out of business. I'm just saying, Democrats, we're about protecting people's health care and their right to health care. I'll just give you one example. I know we're nearly out of time. But I have a friend whose daughter had attempted suicide, and they found her alive and got an ambulance, and my friend was in the ambulance with her on the way to the hospital. This is in the middle of the night, and he realized, because the ambulance driver said something, that your insurance company has to give you prior authorization to check your daughter in. And so he quickly figured out how to call the insurance company in the ambulance, and they would not authorize. This is him on the way to the hospital with his daughter in the ambulance. They wouldn't authorize it. Now, he didn't know whether they ever would, but he knew he had to check his daughter in, because what are you going to do, take her home? And she needs help. She needs at least some observation and a doctor to see her. That he was able to check her in because he happened to know somebody at the hospital who was in leadership, that he called and said, I'll pay you everything out of my own pocket if the insurance company doesn't cover it, but I need to check her in tonight. And that person allowed him to. That shouldn't be. By the way, he happened to have resources that he could call upon. Most people can't. 99.9% of people could not. Is it right for us to allow an insurance company to require prior authorization for that when we know that she needed help and that she probably could have ended up committing suicide, ended up dying if she wasn't checked in. We banned that in the state of Illinois. You now, in emergency mental health situations, an insurance company cannot deny you coverage for the first 72 hours while you're being evaluated and determine what your next steps are. We expanded that again this year. That's something we did last year. We expanded it again this year for all mental health care, not just those emergency situations. I'm telling you that because Democrats should have been on that years ago. And we should be on it every day because these are the problems that people are facing at home. And I'll give you one last example. Why are we not, the federal minimum wage is $7.25, $7.25 an hour. You cannot live on $7.25 an hour. It used to be people said, well, one person could live on $7.25 an hour, but not a whole family. Now one person can't live on, that's $14,000 a year if you work a full-time job. That is what the federal minimum wage is. It's not in Illinois. We raised it to $15. But why are Democrats not out there arguing for raising the minimum wage? Because you know what? If you ask every Republican in Congress what their belief is about the minimum wage, you'll hear two things. One is they do not think we should raise the minimum wage. And two, there's about 40% of the Republicans who would say we shouldn't have a minimum wage in the United States. Let's just let market forces determine. What a great issue for Democrats, right? We believe in raising the minimum wage. We believe that there's a standard of living, at a minimum, sustainable standard of living that everybody should, if you are working and willing to work, that you should earn so that you can take care of your family. And we don't go out and argue for those things as Democrats. We've lost our way in that regard, and it is time for us to refocus on who we are and what we have always believed in, which is, again, standing up for working families and the most vulnerable.
I'm cognizant of the time, so I'm going to make my last two questions kind of lightning round. I'm going to piggyback off of your last answer.
Oh, sorry, that was not a question.
I'm going to piggyback off of your last answer. I know that you've recently announced that you're running for a third term. I'm not asking you if you're going to run for president, though your name has been bandied about. I'm just asking, do you think you would make a good president?
I think I've been a good governor. And I have no idea, except that I think the bar has been set pretty low.
And lastly, here at the Aspen Institute, the idea is to take great ideas and implement them as great and big ideas. For those who are really losing hope, thinking that it's too late to reverse the course of our planet, what gives you hope?
Well, I think the number of people that are here tonight, the number of people that are at this conference, the number of people that I run into in areas where people don't have time or resources to be involved in a conference like this, people will walk up to me and talk to me about how important it is that we preserve their environment, or that we conserve land, or that we focus on clean water and clean air. And the number of people, just average folks out, that gives me hope. Well, it gives me hope that there is a consensus and it is Republicans too. And I can feel it. There is a groundswell. I don't feel like it's happened fast enough for me anyway. But that gives me hope, because we're not, maybe the country's federal administration is trying to take us backward, but the people of the United States are dead set on moving forward, in my view. And so that gives me enormous hope. And then the last thing is that we can make, the state of Illinois, I give as, the prime example of, we didn't have the kind of climate action or climate focus 10 years ago or 20 years ago that we do today. And we have accelerated it in relatively quick fashion. And so the progress you can make in short time with leadership and you know, kind of a groundswell of support is enormous, and so it can happen anytime. It can, you know, if we put our minds to it, we can do anything. And the state of Illinois is a leader today where we were not, and I think people were like down on the state of Illinois because nothing good was happening, it felt like, for so many years. And now, again, we have one of the best climate laws on the you know, on the books, and we're effectuating it of any state in the country. And this is after so many years of us just ignoring it entirely. So that gives me hope. That I wake up every day thinking about the idea that if we could do it in the state of Illinois, it could happen anywhere.
Governor Pritzker, we thank you so much for the time.
All right, my name is Hillary.